Hard Hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to pump him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
Hey, Brian Manning here. Welcome to the Garden Report. And we have another interview lined up this week. Noah Dalzell alongside, and joining us from the Boston Celtics, Jrue Peterson. And Jrue, we were talking about it the other day. 1 year anniversary, I think just yesterday as we record this, of the Celtics winning the championship. So I was going back, watching the clips, saw you up on the stage there. I'm sure the memories were running back for you as well over the last couple of days here.
Yeah, definitely. I saw, the Celtics social media posted about it, and yeah, crazy to think how much can happen, in a year, and obviously finished up my second year here and stuff, but it was absolutely surreal. Just unbelievable experience, and yeah, we're hoping to always kind of get it. That's the goal, the end of every year. So it'll be interesting to see how this OKC Indiana series ends. But yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy a year ago.
What's your protocol when you're no longer in the playoffs? Do you watch all the games? Do you feel like you watch the games as you used to growing up, or is it like completely different now when you watch NBA games and you're also an NBA player hoping to be there?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely different. It's a little more, studying, less kind of entertainment, I feel like, for us. And I'm kind of in and out of spurts. Obviously you got a bad taste in your mouth, exiting the playoffs and stuff like that. So I'm in and out of watching, but, track mostly. And I'll probably watch these last, game or two, depending on what happens. But yeah, just in and out. So
I know one thing, as you watch the playoffs up close, when the Celtics were in it, and then now from afar, a lot of the guys, and, Brad mentioned it too, and Baylor, when we were talking to him a week ago, talked about like the physicality of this playoff in particular. And you guys went through it against Orlando and New York, and now it looks like in the finals, there's just a greater level of physicality allowed. And I'm sure in the playoffs in general, but this one in particular feels like. What stands out about that to you? And what do you guys have to do as players to prepare for that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I feel like it went back to last year, where last year was kind of the first year where it was really noticed, where people started talking about how much more physical the playoffs was. And so I assume they kind of took that into this year, and, a lot of fans liked it. And I assume it was kind of a talking point to, not make the game so much about, refs and stuff like that. Obviously all the fans, feel like they have an opinion on that and stuff. But it definitely brings a different level of like how you approach the game, how you approach the regular season, how you kind of gear up for the playoffs, because it does make it, almost a whole nother game because of the level of physicality, the amount of hand checks you're allowed to do, the contest at the rim and stuff. So it's a different level of preparation. Obviously you see that with, OKC and, the guys they have with, Caruso and Dort and stuff like that, with how physical they can be. So it's a different level of preparation that, comes with it.
And then you said you're back in Boston as of when, like a week ago. What is it like? I think a lot of people hear about off-season workouts and just the trajectory of the life of an NBA player. What's this time of year like for you, of just kind of getting back into the flow? Is it you wake up in the morning, you go to the facility? Like, can you just walk us through a little bit of what that actually feels like? Yeah.
It's pretty cool. With everything's a little more laid back, but also very pointed, and you have intent with everything you do, but just less total time on the court in general. A lot of individual workouts and a lot of scripted live play where you're trying to do an emphasis on certain different rotations or stuff like that. But for younger guys, it's continuing to progress as you kind of hopefully work yourself into a role, and but being very intentional with your time in the summer, I think, is a big thing, where you don't want to get in the court for too long, and kind of overdo yourself early. But like I said, being very intentional with your time slots there.
When I talked to you during the playoffs, you mentioned that you're trying to put some weight on, then, once your season had officially ended on the two-way side of things, and I'm sure that's continuing into the offseason now. Is that toward just a specific goal you have in mind, or a role you foresee yourself playing in the league? Like, what led you to want to put on more muscle over the last year here?
Yeah, I think the big thing is, like you said, the physicality is a big factor. And, you got a lot of grown men out there, and, as a a taller wing, the thing is you got to be able to compete. Take hits to the chest and all that kind of stuff, and try and develop into that real 3-and-D type role. And however that may look, guys that are just skinnier in general, that's the main goal. Outside of work on the general skills of dribbling, shooting, all that kind of stuff, defense. I think a big thing that for my game specifically, it's just with having a little bit thinner of a frame is being able to match up and kind of get ready for physicality, as especially the playoffs really geared towards something like that, as we've over the last few years seen.
How much weight have you
And I
been
know-
able to put on at this point?
I'm sitting about like 202 right now. I'm trying to get to probably like 208 to 210 range by season. So I think that would be a good kind of happy medium of I can get there with just strength and not overdoing it. So we're progressing. We're progressing every summer. So.
When you got to Boston, I remember talking to you, I think shortly after you signed that two-way, you're matched up. I don't know how often you guys actually scrimmage in practice, but you get opportunities to go up against Jaylen Brown, Jayson, Tatum, kind of get a taste of competing against some of the best wings in the NBA?
Yeah, definitely. I think it kind of depends on what time of the year it is. Once the season gets going, obviously a lot less of that. But preseason, training camp, stuff like that, and then I think it's funny, as I saw on Twitter, like a big thing was doing scout team and like who's playing who on scout teams and stuff like that during the playoffs. And I remember that was a trend for a little bit. But yeah, scout team will go up against them. It's a little more scripted than typical stuff. Obviously, you don't want to get anybody hurt, but we're going decently hard in drills like that as the playoffs get going.
Who were
Are you
you in
ever-
the drills?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was Wagner for the Magic series.
Okay.
Taller playmaking guard a little bit, so kind of made a little sense. And I think I was Bridges maybe for the next series. But yeah, guys, we could have fun with it. It's a good time that younger guys get to enjoy.
How hardcore do you go with that? Like, are you watching Wagner film and trying to like emulate his moves, or is it just like Jrue do the basic pattern of movement that he does on the floor? Like how personally do you take that assignment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's general film stuff which happens in each series with us watching kind of their offense and all that kind of jazz, and so eventually you kind of just narrow in on with being on scout, you don't really take it too lightly, because you're trying to do anything you can in terms of to help prepare the guys for what they're going to see on the court. So you're kind of just paying attention to your role and what it looks like on the court, and being prepared. And so, you take it pretty seriously, but you can also have a good time with it in terms of, getting to try some new things out that these guys do and stuff like that. So definitely a fun time.
Yeah, and how do you view this offseason? Obviously, you're in weightlifting and improvement and all that mode right now, just getting better at the facility, but you're obviously going to have a free agency this summer as well, and maybe some summer league as well, potentially here. What do you view as the next step in your career here after spending a couple of years with Boston? Are you even starting to think about what decisions you might have to make this summer?
Yeah. I mean, I love it here. It's been a great couple of years, and I hope to be here for a long time. And obviously, it looms for a lot of players and stuff like that. So kind of waiting to see. But I love it here. I can't speak better of how much I love being in Boston, and the organization, top to bottom, is incredible. So so it's been great. I'm happy to be back here working out with the guys and stuff like that. So so I do love it here.
And then obviously, you were a two-way the last two seasons, but you still get to be a part of everything in the playoffs. Like you mentioned the scout team, but what are other things that maybe we wouldn't know about what it's like to be a part of the ride for a championship? Like what does your days look like? What does your preparation look like? Is it do you pretty much prepare the same way that you would if you were playing, or is it a lot more on the film? Like what is that process like?
Oh, you're saying for two-way specifically, or
Yeah, just
everybody?
as a two-way, because like we see you guys sitting in the crowd sometimes, but then at the same time you're like studying film and you're very much in all the conversations. So just like how different do you think it does feel to know that you actually can suit up, but you're still obviously a part of the team?
Yeah, right. No, I think it's basically the same every day. Besides the fact of suiting up, there is really only whether it be 7, 8, 9 guys playing on any given night, especially in the playoffs. Obviously it's shortened rotation, so everything's similar day to day. You're involved in practice, you're watching film, you're doing everything. So it's pretty typical day to day. Outside of like you said, the intensity is up, the intent of what you're doing. Everything's obviously very locked in, top to bottom, in terms of people trying to two ways and lower end roster guys of trying to find a way to help the guys kind of get ready for each game. So it's pretty similar outside of everything ramped up as you'd expect.
And you've had
You've had-
multiple teammates. Kata and JD both get their 2 ways converted to a standard deal. Is that something that you're like? Is that an ultimate goal? Is that something that you're really working toward and thinking a lot about as over the last year and a half?
Of course, yeah, that's the goal, and I'm hoping to just show my worth and show that I can play out there. And I was happy with the stints I got this year, and I'm to be able to show I can compete in these high level NBA games. So the goal is always progressing in that regard. So we'll kind of see what happens with that.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a balance. The Celtics probably see like stuff they want to see from you in terms of your role and how you fit in on this team. And I'm sure you have some aspirations of certain things you want to be able to do, with your game and your career. What do you see your NBA role ultimately being on a team? Like, is that something you think about? Is that something you're working toward in terms of where you fit in on a team like this, or really any team in general? And are there certain guys you try to emulate or pull from on this team, or really any team in the league, in terms of like maybe a comparison or something of what kind of role you want to play?
Yeah, no, I think it's a cliche term nowadays. Everyone throws it around, but being a little bit of a do-it-all glue guy is what I've always tried to emulate. And I think that it's something that guys like Jrue Holiday and Derek White and certain guys like that do such a good job of playing off those those stars, like a guy like JT and JB, where you kind of try and do a little bit of everything. You're contributing in every type of way, and you're kind of just fitting in almost at times throughout it. And I think that's why the big focus for me has been putting on weight and then also ball handling for me, because I think being able to play as many positions as possible and guard as many positions as possible gives you the highest opportunity to get on the court. And just finding different ways, I think, to be able to contribute just gives you more options for a guy like your coach to be able to trust you out there and know that you could not be picked on in certain scenarios or not have a fault on the offensive end where teams are kind of working around you offensively. So I'm just trying to be able to fill any holes I can to show that I can really compete out there.
So guys always mention Jrue. And it was funny when you got into the game against Cleveland. I remember you mentioned you thought it was Jrue going in, not you. What do you learn from being around a guy like that? Because I feel like almost everybody on the team has been like, "Oh, I'm trying to learn from Jrue and things he does defensively." And obviously, I'm sure it's a challenge going up against him too. If you ever, have him guarding you, like, what are some of the things you've learned from being his teammate over the last year?
Yeah, I just think he embodies, the perfect type of guy, type of teammate, on off the court that you can imagine. And he shows it with how he plays. He's very selfless, and he doesn't demand shots, doesn't need shots. He takes shots when he gets them, and works his butt off on the defensive end. And like you saw 2 years ago with the playoffs, he had a massive playoffs for us 2 years ago, and he had a great year for us this year too. But he's just always there in the big moments. Whether it be big offensive rebounds, big stops. It's just big hit undercuts and finish. It's just he does a little bit of everything out there, and I think that's something where another just cliche thing is like, oh yeah, I want to be like Jrue Holiday, but it really is. It really is just like a guy that has perfectly embodied fitting into like a role. When he's called upon. Obviously, with the Bucks, he was in a different role, and here he's in a certain role, and so it's just like a guy who can be adaptable. I think that's a big thing for younger kids to hopefully kind of get as you progress through each level. It's just being adaptable to different spots and being able to kind of mold to whatever situation that is given. So that's why I can't say enough good things about Jrue. That's for sure.
And a shout out to LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn Jobs. Go over there to linkedin.com/garden. You can't clock out early as a small business owner. Your business is on your mind 24/7. So when you're hiring, you need a partner that works as hard as you do. And that hiring partner is LinkedIn Jobs. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. Post your job for free over there at linkedin.com/garden and get qualified candidates. You can post for free or pay to promote, and Promote Jobs get 3 times more qualified candidates. You can share it with your network, and 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them get high quality candidates. So find out why more than 2.5 small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring today. Find your next great hire on LinkedIn. That's linkedin.com/garden to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Jrue, we have some rapid fire questions for you too, that we wanted to ask. I guess I wanted to start with what is a friendship that you have with somebody on the team that might surprise people? Like, I figured you're probably pretty close with the guys that are, played with you in Maine, but outside of those guys, is there anybody that you've gotten to know that you've gotten particularly close with over the last year and a half?
Yeah, me and Porzingis have a funny like UFC dynamic where we watch a ton of UFC, big UFC fans, watching all the smaller fight night cards and stuff.
Who's your favorite fighter?
A little bit of a wild one, but is Alexander Volkov. He's a heavyweight. He's a stud. He's not like a big. He's a big name, but he's not like the typical cliche Conor McGregor call out. But yeah, I watch a good amount, so it's really, and we always talk about that. We're watching stuff together, and so he's great. I love KP. He's great.
Joe's into that too, right?
Yeah, Joe loves it too, and so we got a good like 4 or 5 guys around the facility that kind of talk it up about it.
We asked Baylor this last week. Do you have a favorite Joe story, Joe interaction?
Nothing. I don't know what he said, but nothing specific. Where
he said when he came in after training camp, he had a meeting with them, and Joe said, "I hate rookies."
I don't like rookies, to be exact.
I don't like rookies. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I could say it's kind of a similar situation. Like he obviously pulls I assume kind of individually gets like the younger guys in general on the roster, and he's very direct with you. Like he'll say we're not expecting you to as being a two-way you're not expected to obviously be in the rotation. So if anything it'd probably go to the day like I said where he randomly called on me in Cleveland, which I obviously didn't expect, just especially because going back and forth between Boston and Maine, you're kind of in and out of knowing the plays and knowing really what's going on. And so I like that he's spontaneous like that. I like that he kind of wants to put people to the fire like that and kind of see what happens. So he's a great guy, but he's awesome. He's awesome to be around.
Do you think he's different than what people think in the public world? Like, obviously people see his like press conference clips and things like that, but like knowing him as your actual coach, is he different?
No. He's as authentic as you see him behind the mic. Like he's some people get it wrong with thinking like you can turn that on and off. Like he's like that everywhere, and he's definitely he's funny. He's a good dude, and he's got his own flavor on things. So he's great. He's a great guy.
What's the best advice you've gotten from a teammate, coach, since you've gotten to the league? Just anyone around you, and who is it from?
Oh, let me think. It's a good question. I'd say never. I can't remember who exactly told me. There's someone on the team, but never being too high, never being too low, because I think it can be like a gift and a curse in ways of when you're playing really well, you kind of think you've made it in a way. Then when you're playing bad, you think like you're about to you think the worst. You have a bad night shooting. I think especially for younger guys, it can be even worse because when you have guys that are in the last kind of 6-7 spots in the team, and you're getting in the last few minutes of games, you judge your whole night on that 1-3 you had that was open. You go 0 for 1 for the game in the last 3 minutes, and you're just like, I'm a mess, and stuff like that. And so it's something you kind of really got to learn from early on, where you got to be confident. And like, if you go 1 for 1, or at least that's how it used to be, I'd go 1 for 1 or 2 for 2, and it'd be the best night of my life, leaving the arena.
Yeah.
So it's something really, where you, as a younger guy and a guy in a limited role, you got to get used to, and you got to be ready for when your time's called. That's why they say stay ready and stuff like that. But so never being too high, never being too low, and having kind of an even keel, stuff like that.
So those blowout minutes, like those few minutes that you might get in, how you play really sticks with you initially. Like you have to kind of unlearn that, but because the fans might not even remember, right? Like they
right.
Noah and I have always debated that one. Does it matter, those garbage time minutes?
I think it matters because it's all we see, right? So it's kind of all but
it definitely matters it definitely matters for us. But I think that's in terms of like development and hoping to show good flashes. I think is a big thing, but I think that's something that kind of helped my perspective was like, at that point in the games, the fans aren't even really paying attention. So you can kind of like chill out when, like, in terms of like, keep your stress levels down. I think that's something that I've gradually gotten a lot better with. And, but there obviously is pressure. You're getting like 1 or 2 shots max, and so you're like, man, I really got to make this. And it's something that early on, I think younger guys struggle with.
And you think about how many times like a star player might start 0 for 6 and then finish
Right.
the game, with 20 points on 50% shooting, but it's like you don't have that luxury at that point. So I always say it looks like you're shooting like not you specifically, but it looks like you're shooting like a ball of weights because the pressure is so enormous in that moment.
For sure, no doubt.
What's your favorite game you've been a part of since you've been in Boston, and maybe a play that stands out from the 2 years here, that you've just been able to see up close?
Like I was directly involved in, or just
No, just seeing from the team, over the last 2 years here. Favorite game, favorite play.
Favorite play would probably have to be the Payton's half quarter. I think it was at the end of the third last year in the finals game. That was kind
There
of
were 2 of them.
Oh yeah, was there 2 in that game?
There was one in game 2.
Game 5, I think it was right before the half. The clinching game right before the half.
Okay, yeah. Whenever that happened, that was like, you could feel the energy. You're like, oh my gosh, like, this is really about to happen. And that was just like, obviously an incredible feeling. Obviously we still had some time to go, but you can kind of feel us on the cusp. And overall, I mean, it's, once again, I keep saying these cliche things, but, the finals games are always what you're going to go back to. That last game was just incredible. And, the energy in the arena. The parade for me was the number one thing. The parade was like, it blew everything out of the water, in my opinion.
What was parade day like for you? What are the memories that stand out?
Just like kind of seeing everybody, like how many people there were around, and we're taking the duck boats around the city, and just like seeing like consistently throughout all the streets. And I didn't know the Boston area too well by that point, but just filled everywhere. It was incredible. So the support
was on your
unbelievable.
float?
It was me and JD, and then like family, friends, stuff like that. But it was me and JD. Yeah.
And you mentioned
Oh, go ahead.
We hear a lot. We hear a lot about his work ethic behind the scenes. I'm just curious. Like, I think Mike Zarin tweeted like he was, of all the people he's been around, he had the best work ethic. Like, what is he actually like behind the scenes as it relates to just kind of his work ethic?
Yeah, I think it's just consistency. I think that's a big thing for that I've grown to realize, and that like I try to preach to younger people too, that it isn't like, you see these, TikToks or whatever about, like guys that, you got to be, pushing yourself to, the edge of the cliff every day. And like, I think it really is as simple as, and I think he's a good, symbol of this, of like just being consistent with what you do, doing the same things, taking your time, be intentful, have intent with what you do. And, he's just very consistent. Like he's been here, working out already. And you could tell, just watching him and watching him do his stuff, like he's, doing all this stuff at game speed and stuff like that. So I just think having a lot of intent with what you do, and, it's not like you have to, run 30 miles and, like I said, run to the edge of the cliff, but it's just being consistent and, getting your work in that you need to get in each day, and stuff like that. And I think he's a good representation of that.
You guys feeling motivated by the way the year ended? Obviously, I know Peyton's back early now, and Jayson's gonna have to go through the rehab, obviously, over however long it's gonna be here now. I'm sure that was a tough ending for all you guys. Like, what have you carried with you from that? You and your teammates. Like, how have you just decompressed over the last month, and what have you pulled from the way the season ended for you guys?
Yeah. I think it's, everyone's taking a little bit of a reset, and, it's kind of weird ending across the board just with, injuries and all that kind of stuff. But I think that we're all just kind of getting ready. We're all, it's just back to business. I think that's a good thing, is kind of, there's so many guys that have already been around, and everyone, I think that's what's great about this group of guys. Everyone's so mature and professional, and, they're going to take care of their business. And like I said, be consistent. So it's great to see, a lot of the guys back around, and kind of itching to get back in the gym, and to go and try and claim what's ours again. So it'll be great to see, and we're looking forward to a great offseason with all that.
Who's been the usual cast at the Auerbach Center these days?
A lot of the younger guys, and Peyton's been around, and I've seen Al, and I think a few, obviously a couple of guys rehabbing and stuff. So, but I think guys will tend to flow in over the next few weeks or so, or I think summer league will kind of be a pick up in between there, but the guys are working everywhere, no matter where they are. I know, that's what's so good about this group. It's just everyone works their butt off, so it's great.
Well, that's when I got Jrue. You've been around Baylor a ton, JD, some of the guys who've been your teammates in Maine who are part of this Boston team going into the future. Just seeing their game so up close and, their development track here alongside yours. Like, what do you see from those guys that they could offer in the league at some point here? Obviously, JD got his NBA deal. Baylor got some of the NBA minutes late in the year. Hope I'm not forgetting anyone there. But in terms of the guys you've played with in Maine who are trying to make that leap alongside you, like what stands out about their games and what they could bring to the Celtics?
Yeah, I mean, JD's, as good of a case as anybody in terms of, obviously G League MVP, and, he's shown that, he's virtually unguardable in that format. And so, he had an incredible year, and, that's obviously why he earned that contract. And, Baylor, great, like you said, great NBA minutes toward the end of the year, and played really well. And I think for the younger guys, it's, it's all about, developing and continuing to kind of stay the course. Obviously, with it being the Celtics, it's a little bit of a unique situation in comparison to a lot of teams, across the league, where you have a lot of older guys in a pretty stable rotation, and so it's hard for anybody to kind of crack that lineup or really earn consistent minutes. But everyone around here is so talented, and including Jordan and Nemi and all that kind of stuff. And so I've been with these guys for a while, and I know with playing with them that everyone's got a good chance at really making a big impact on this team one day. So it'll be great to see another off season ahead for everybody, including myself, and where that development will take them.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
All right, Jrue Peterson, Boston Celtics. We'll see if he goes through with Summer League next month, and we'll be talking to you again soon, hopefully here. Good luck with the offseason and free agency and all that again, Jrue.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right, and that has been the Garden Report. We will talk to you guys here soon.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're going to do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to feel that way. Let's
Yeah.
slide Al over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke an hour early. We're not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke